Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about two really disturbing weight cuts that I saw within the UFC recently. One was the person actually making weight, and the other was the post weigh-in jump that they were able to do. I want to talk about this because it is very pertinent to anybody out there who is ever thinking of competing, and there are things you need to know to make your weight cut safe, but also realize that if you keep it super safe, you're going to be at a massive disadvantage, as we will demonstrate in today's video. So you guys know on this channel, I like to keep things real. I like to tell you my actual thoughts, and I don't like to beat around the bush. So the first thing I'm going to tell you about the situation today is I do find it very disturbing. But on the flip side, I'm also a little bit jealous of these fighters who are able to make this massive weight cut. They go way down and then they shoot back up. And it's something that I've avoided, number one, for safety, but number two, just because my body does not seem to like big weight cuts. And I'm actually super pumped about now being signed with Karate Combat, because before, when I was walking at 155, I had to do the cut to 145, which doesn't sound like that much to most people out there. Before I moved to Bellator and I was fighting with Glory, the cut was to 143. 2 pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but to me it was a massive difference. But now with Karate Combat, I'm going to be going to 149. So realistically, I need to work on putting some muscle on so I'm not undersized. But I guess realistically, I've been undersized my whole career because so many people are making massive weight cuts, and that is what we're talking about today, the two disturbing ones that I saw super recently. Now, before we get to the one which is just super ugly, and we're actually going to see the fighter making weight. I'm going to post video footage of him actually mid-weight cut, but before that I want to talk about Sterling, who recently fought against Petr Yan, and they had a bout at 135 pounds, which is the bantamweight limit for the UFC. Now to me, Sterling, when he gets in the actual octagon, he doesn't look anywhere close to 135 for me, and I was always thinking, I wonder what this guy can get up to post-fight or post-weigh-in before the fight. Then the other day, he posted a little video footage, I believe, of him getting on the scale and showing what weight he went from in 1 week. 135 on weigh-in day, 1 week later. What weight did he manage to put on in that amount of time? You guys, super fast. Take a guess. Think, what could somebody possibly put on in 1 week when they're super ripped, super toned for that weight cut? I'm going to give you guys just a second to stew it over, think about it, throw out some numbers in your head, and I will tell you right now, Sterling went from 135 pounds, posted footage of him getting on the scale 1 week later at 176 pounds. That is crazy. That is 41 pounds more than he was a week earlier on weigh-in day, and that leads me to believe that this is probably somewhere around what he can walk outside of camp, which just shows you how much these fighters are cutting. Now, to give you a frame of reference on how much I'm willing to cut, when I first looked at doing some MMA, my managers looked at me or talked to me and they said, Gabriel, if you want to be competitive, we're going to have to get you down to 135 pounds. There's no question. You cannot be competitive at 145 pounds. And I just said, honestly, guys, I have no interest in putting my body through these massive cuts. I have done the minimal weight cutting at kickboxing, being successful. I might not be successful in MMA with these small 10-pound weight cuts, but I'm not willing to put my body through any more at this stage in my career. I have nothing really massive to gain from going and winning a couple MMA fights. I'm a striker at heart, and I'm going to be a striker, and making these massive weight cuts and trying to get down to 135 pounds, depleting myself, all the dangers that come with that, it just was not worth it. And now I want to move in and look at the fighter. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Khamzat Chimaev, I believe, something like that. Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, I've actually never watched one of his full fights yet. I haven't heard people actually pronounce his name, so I'm just thinking that's right, hopefully. But Khamzat, he on his YouTube channel posted footage of his actual weight cut when he fought Gilbert Burns very recently. And I went back and I went, oh, I want to watch this. I'm interested in seeing what kind of weight cut somebody like him is actually doing. How much is he dropping? And how does he look when he actually makes the weight? And he looks terrible. it was actually hard for me to watch because first, before we actually go through footage of him, I want to walk you through a couple things that have happened to me mid-weight cut. And keep in mind that I'm only cutting 10 pounds. And I'm not talking 10 pounds of water weight. I'm talking 10 pounds in total. So that for me is 5 pounds of dieting and then 5 pounds of water weight, sometimes even less, because sometimes I'll push it hard on the dieting and do 7 pounds. So I just have that 3-pound water cut. So what are some things that have happened to me when I'm in a similar situation to Khamzat, which we'll see in a moment, the footage that we're going to see? What are things that have happened to me? Well, number one, when I'm cutting weight, the heart. Normal heart rate for me, I have a resting heart rate of about 45 to 48. Super chill. When you're in weight cut mode, you're cutting the water weight and you're laying on the bed or you're laying on the ground or you're doing something like that and your heart is just firing and it's scary and it's something that you don't want. Second thing that has happened to me, oh, and by the way, I'm sure Khamzat was going through that. You get very dizzy when that happens, which leads me to point number 2. We'll see Khamzat sort of fall down. His head is not able to stay up. And I've had a couple times where I got out of the bath. And after I got out of the bath, I went, oh, and I had to lay down. And one of my more recent weight cuts, when I got out of the bath, and overall, just so you guys know, I do the bath very infrequently. It is my least favorite way to cut weight. Is what I would suggest avoiding if you can, because it is so hard on the system, even though you get it done fast. I was in the bath. I went, okay, I don't have any more strength left to stay here. Just my willpower is gone. So I'm just going to put the sauna suit. We were in Texas. I'm going to go outside into the hot parking lot and do some shadow boxing. On the way down, walking through the lobby, I had to sit down because I was right at the point where I was about to collapse just because I was so dizzy. So this is very dangerous. And keep in mind, I'm only cutting 3 to 5 pounds. So we're going to talk about Khamzat now. I made some notes here because I want to get all this stuff right. So the first thing that we see him do is he jumps on the pads. He's hitting the pads, he's getting his body warm, getting a little bit of calories burnt, but overall just heating the body up. Once he does that, he then heads to the treadmill and starts running. And he's running and he's running. I don't know how long he's running, but we can see sweat just dripping down onto the treadmill and just dripping off the treadmill. I've had this a couple times. I always feel bad for the hotel after. I'm like, man, I just drenched everything, and I try to clean up as best I can. But when you're sweating off that much, it's very hard to keep everything super clean. From there, he jumps onto a stationary bicycle. And at this point, I was kind of wondering, like, oh, how much more does he have to go here? How much more weight does he have? So from there, he ends up going and checking his weight. And he is at 80 kilos, which means he has to get down to 77. So he still has a good 7 pounds to go. And this is after he's already put in time on the pads, he's run, and he's done some bicycling, and he still has 7 pounds to go. Now he gets in the bath. We can see footage of him actually falling down, trying to get that sauna suit off. And that's what I was talking about before, where you start getting pretty dizzy and you're going, whoa, even if you're sitting. It's very dangerous and it's very scary. And seeing him go through that just reminded me of my weight cut, except I recognize that his is probably much worse than mine. So I was really empathizing as I watched him. But it's like, okay, if that's not enough, then he gets back on the scale and he still has 2 kilos to go. So then he gets back in the bath and then wrapped up in towels. And watching this guy in the bath, he just looks like he's spaced out. He's zoned out. And then from there, we see people like massaging his head and massaging his hands. And it looks like he's a casualty of war. And people are trying to resuscitate him. That's how in pain he looks and how much love he's having to get from his cornermen to make it look like it's going to make it a little bit more comfortable. It's very concerning to me and not at all fun to watch. But these weight cuts just point out how extreme the drops are and regaining the weight is in UFC. If I had to take a guess what Khamzat was actually walking at before he started, I would say, okay, he fights at 170 pounds. That was his weigh-in weight. He's fighting at 170 pounds, but he did about, let's say, a 10-pound water cut. Then he was probably dieting. And he might have dieted 15 pounds on his way down, but then through all of camp, he's losing weight. It would not surprise me to find out that this guy is not just walking at about 200 pounds, I would say more like 210. Is very, very realistic. And he's doing a 40-pound cut to get down to 170 pounds. Now, recently it's come to my attention that a couple UFC fighters that I have connections with through other people are making these massive weight cuts down to weight classes where they know they can be competitive, because if they're walking at something like 200 pounds, they recognize that dropping to 185 is not going to be enough. They know that middle weight class, they're just going to be too small. And these enormous cuts that people are doing are almost making it unfair for people who don't want to go in and do that to their body. So like I said, I'm a little disappointed that it's happening, but on the flip side, I'm still jealous. I'm still jealous of these guys who are able to get in the ring and be so much bigger and so much stronger than their opponents. But bear in mind, if something goes wrong in your weight cut, you're going to feel it. You're going to be slow. You're going to be sluggish. It's going to come back and it's going to haunt you when you're fighting, and you will not be able to perform at top level. So making the weight is part of the battle, but getting the weight back on, getting rehydrated, getting your energy levels up is the other part of the battle, which can be very finicky and can end up costing you the fight if you don't get things done correctly and you don't have a team who are absolute professionals. So you guys let me know in the comments, which of these two fighters, Sterling or Khamzat, shocked you more? Which we talked about today. Is the massive weight cut and what we see Khamzat go through with all the video footage I provided you, is that more shocking? Or is it more shocking knowing that Sterling managed to go from 135 pounds to 176 pounds in 1 week? To me, that is crazy. I fight at 145, or now 149 pounds. The highest I've ever been in my entire life getting on a scale is 161 pounds. That is the most ever. And that was me absolutely trying to get on as much weight as I could, putting in max effort, at least what I think is max effort. But for me, mostly I'm walking at 155 to 157. Although, like I said, I'm going to try and bump that up just a little bit with some extra strength training, because that's something I don't normally prioritize. So, what are your guys' thoughts on weight cuts? Throw them in the comments below. Do you think they're fair? Do you think ONE FC is on the right track? Having the hydration tests, which make sure fighters cannot do these extreme cuts, but have that distinct advantage over their opponent in that mass size that they're able to gain. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you appreciate the content, please give it a like. If you have not already, join the channel and get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard. I'll see you back here soon for another video.